feel so good inside. Both in your eyes. I like the way you work me. Feel my body and set me free.
Hey guys, Dilby here. Welcome back to the channel. So today we're looking at Max Dean. He's an up-and-coming rising star in the kind of deep house, minimal house. He's released on labels like Solid Grooves, Repopulate Mars, EastEnders, and he's got an upcoming release on Wheat's label. So as with most artists, his output is slightly varied, ranging from kind of deep house through to more minimal inspired tech house, I would say. Really cool stuff, and he's been gaining quite a bit of hype at the moment. His release on Solid Grooves did really well and was up high in the charts for quite a while, and his recent release on EastEnders has been really killing it. I really like that one, and that's kind of what we've referenced here. So this is leaning a little bit more on the deep house side than the tech house side, but I did reference some of his more tech house tracks and try to incorporate some of the production aesthetics and production techniques that he uses. Just quickly, if you like the track that's playing, it's a new one of mine. It's out now on Glasgow Underground and it's doing pretty well in the charts. So if you want to support that, there's a link in the description to Beatport. Go and grab a copy. Appreciate you. And as always, if you want to grab the project files from this video, then there's a link in the description to Patreon. Patreon is one of the best ways that you can support the channel. Make sure I keep bringing you these videos every week. Now let's jump into Ableton and make some deep minimal house. Alright guys, so here we are inside Ableton, and this is a wee project that I've put together in the style of Max Dean, his stuff on EastEnders. It's probably pretty similar to stuff on Piv at the moment. When I was doing this, I was referencing Max's latest EP on EastEnders, but also referenced a bit of the stuff from Solid Grooves and also Repopulate Mars. So I'll just play you a wee sample of what we're into here. It's 128 BPM and it's this kind of deep house, minimal house type of thing. Cool stuff, very groovy.
Feel my body and set me free.
Alright, so that's the sound we're going for. As always, we'll just jump in from the start with the drums. This is the kick that I've got, and it's just playing standard 4/4 pattern, and it's something I've sampled from Max Dean. I took this from one of his tracks, Blatant Stealing. I'll link a video up here if you want to check out how to do that. I've gone over it in detail, but it's a cool kick, solid, nothing too crazy, not too techno. Nice little click on the top, not too heavy. We've got a couple of claps, they're grouped here. We've got one here coming from East End Dubs Single Hits Pack. And on that one, I've got this Haas width effect. So that's just delaying the left and right channels a little bit and spreading it out wide. Because we've got two claps, I'm not too worried about the mono compatibility of that. Although I have checked it and it does sound fine. Then I've got another clap which I just got from a top loop here, and I've just used the clip gain envelope to take away the hats. So that sounds like this. So nice kind of slightly analog drum machine sounding clap and quite contrasting in sound to the first one. So those together sound like this. And they are being processed on this group with free clip, so that's just clipping a little bit off the top, a little bit of the transient. So it sounds pretty much the same, but it's just shaving off a bit of the transient, which allows us to have the clap a little bit louder, but without triggering the limiter on the master. And then I've got some reverb here. I noticed in the deeper tracks, the more kind of deep housey kind of thing, he actually had quite a bit of reverb and it was quite long. It's probably more than I would normally go for in my tracks, but that's what he had and it gives it a certain sound. So without the reverb, So you can see I've got a bit of pre-delay on the reverb, which is kind of, so the clap happens and then there's a 30-ish millisecond delay before the reverb starts, which just helps to make it sound kind of a bit bigger without washing it out too much. And as always, if you like what you're hearing, you can download the project files from the link in the description. It goes through my Patreon. It's one of the best ways that you can support the channel. Then we've got some hats. Got a few different things happening here. Got a couple of textural bits. This texture hat. Also coming from EastEndDub's single hits pack. And I've got Tantra and Autopan on that, so if I take them off, so nice enough, but a little bit boring. That's just happening on the 8th notes. There's a little bit of bounce there with the velocity. Then I've added Tantra. Now Tantra, I'm using it quite sparingly. I mean, the mix is at 100%, but the preset is not over the top and crazy glitchy. Probably a year or so ago, maybe 2 years ago, you would have heard a lot more of this really glitchy stuff in this kind of music. But I think it's been toned down quite a bit now, and you want to make this type of thing. It's still being used, but I think you want to make it a bit more subtle. So that just helps to really turn this hat from just a hat into something quite cool and atmospheric. And then the Autopan just moves it around the panorama a little bit, makes it a little bit more stereo. And by doing things like this, it allows us to use less in the track, giving everything more space, making it easier to mix, but filling up that space, making it sound full. Then I've got this shaker, really nothing to it, just straight 16ths. Got some swing on this, MPC 1657. That's the universal swing that I've used on everything. And I've got an LFO tool, which is just ducking it to the kick, giving it a little bit of pump. And then I've got a little bit of flanger, which just makes it sound a little bit more interesting. It's a little bit bland like this. So it just gives, again, a little bit more texture. So with both of these hats, so the combination of that Tantra and this flanger is just helping to add some interest to these otherwise pretty regular hi-hats. Now we've got this open hat, again, EastEndDub's great pack for one-shots. Just playing the offbeats with a couple of little syncopated notes here, here, and here. Let's just play that with the kick. So it's an open hat, but it's not too big and crazy. Then we've got this 909, which really picks up the pace and adds some solid energy and gives it that kind of classic housey feel. This is one I've just got from Native Instruments Machina from the factory library. Then the last thing we've got in the drums, so very simple drums here, is this breakbeat sample. So you can see there's quite a bit of processing going here. This is how it sounds. It's very low in the mix, and I've taken away the lows and the highs. It's just like adding a little bit of groove and texture. So with the kick it sounds like this. You'll notice here I've also quantized it and then added the same swing so it kind of sits in the groove with the other elements. So with this breakbeat, this is what it originally sounds like. It's a cool sound, but it's not quite what I was looking for. I was just looking for something to kind of fill up a little bit of space and give a little bit of shuffle with some of these 16th hits. What I've done to process it, I'm using the glue compressor. I've got the soft clipping turned on and the range turned all the way down. So what that means is when I use this makeup gain, it starts to indicate with the yellow light here on the clip section when it's soft clipping. So it's doing the same thing that I was talking about on the hi-hats, on the claps with this Ven Audio free clip. This is free, so you can download this if you like. I use a couple of different clippers myself, but for these videos I like to try and use free plugins if I'm using third-party ones. Just makes it accessible to everyone who's watching. I've used another free plugin from Kilohertz, Transient Shaper. They've got a great suite of free and simple plugins, so I recommend checking those out. If we turn that off, I'll just turn this reverb off as well. So the glue compressor is really adding quite a bit of volume. So this is what the transient's doing. It's softening the transient by pulling down the attack, and then I'm adding a little bit of sustain as well. So that's just sounding a lot less punchy, which is kind of what we want for this. Most of the time I'm looking to make my drums sound more punchy, but in this case it's just filling out some space. And I'm not sure if this is how Max Dean was doing it, but I heard stuff like this in a few of his tracks. As a bonus, it's cool that it's got this little background vocal, some people talking, sounds like at a party or something. There was another breakbeat which I tried. I think this one just fitted with the vibe of the track a little bit better, but it's always worth trying a few different options. Then I'm adding some reverb to kind of fill out some of the atmosphere. Also, again, helps to soften the transients a little bit, and then using the EQ to cut away the lows and the highs. And using the LFO tool to duck the kick. We don't want this, especially with the clap. We don't want it interfering with the claps. So let's listen to it without, and then I'll turn it on. So super, super subtle. Okay, let's take a look at the bass. Here's the MIDI, sounds like this. Nice, so we're in the key of E minor and we're using Vital. So the patch from Vital is pretty simple. I've got 3 sawtooth oscillators, and we've got this one tuned down 2 octaves, 1 octave, and then just playing at 0. So it's playing over 3 octaves, but the lower octave is the loudest. Then we're pulling the volume down a little bit and down a bit more. Then we've got it going into a filter. So it sounds like this without the filter. I'll just turn these all. Now I wanted the bass to be quite audible rather than subby. It seemed to be a pretty common characteristic in Max Dean's tracks that I was referencing. For the filter type, I've used this dirty 12 dB. So if I used a 24 dB, which I quite often do, you'll see it doesn't let through as much of the mid-range. And if I use like the regular default analog one, it doesn't add as much of the kind of drive and saturation. Now I've got this envelope 1 is the envelope for the amplification, so it's got quite a decent amount of sustain, a little bit of release, and then envelope 2 is nice, tight, plucky, short decay, no sustain, short release, and envelope 2 is controlling the filter, so every time it plays it does this quick punch up which just lets through some of the higher frequencies. I'm using macro 2 here so that I can add some automation to that. And in the effects section we've got a bit of chorus and a bit of distortion. So that's just adding soft clipping. I'm also using a little bit of this envelope 2 onto the filter of the distortion, so you can just see the cutoff. If we used a different type of distortion, it would be a lot more aggressive. So soft clipping seemed to be the kind of give it the right feel. We want this kind of nice, warm, audible feeling sound, but not too aggressive. And then the chorus just helps to spread it out a little bit. I'm using this bandpass filter to avoid the subs on the chorus, and we've just got it mixed in quite slightly. But it gives the bass a lot more kind of presence and character. So together with the kick. So it's quite a repetitive bass line, but then it's got this fill at the end, which is quite nice. Makes it quite funky and gives it like a nice little turnaround. And I kind of referenced a couple of different tracks to make this and then kind of Frankensteined them together. You can hear it's got some nice syncopation with the drums. Sounds good. I've got this sent to a little bit of reverb. It's here, this synth verb, and this is just from my standard template. I'll link to a video up here where you can go and check it out. I go through my whole template in detail. You can also download it from Patreon. So this is the preset that I use, set to 100% dry wet, and I'm just using the send to dictate the amount that's being sent. All right, let's have a look at the melodic elements. There's some cool stuff in here. I've got this E piano. So a nice little riff, adds some real kind of vibe to the track. So there's like a nice little motif going on here, and then I've just, every kind of 2-bar section, I've just changed it up a little bit with playing some different notes or keeping the pattern and changing the notes. Pretty arbitrary or random the way that I've done it. It's just to create some differentiation but keep the familiarity. Now it's just a preset from Ableton, and I'm using this MIDI device to play down a fifth, which is also, it's like playing it up a seventh, which is a power chord, or which is like a minor triad minus the third. So without it, it would sound like this. Quite a bit more vibey with it. I'm using this add some random to randomize the velocity. So that just means that each time those notes come through this MIDI device, they're being increased or decreased by up to 30 velocity values. Yeah, this is a preset from Ableton. It's here, it's from Electric actually, cutting out the lows a little bit. Now I've got this Magic Switch by Baby Audio, another free plugin. It's a chorus basically. It is really cool. So I'll just turn off the echo and the beat repeat. So you can go and download this from Baby Audio's website. Just sounds way more vibey. So normally on my channel I'm using the Tal Chorus LX, which will come again later, but I like to have like a few different choruses that I use to just kind of switch it up and give things different vibes. Now I'm using this echo to just add some echo, set to ping pong, dotted eighth notes, sounds like this. And I've got the reverb set to 38%, so without the reverb. And then I've got this beat repeat. So this is just one of the presets from Ableton, and I just literally cycled through the presets till I heard something that sounded interesting. So it's not doing too much, but it's just adding to the vibe and texture. So it's just also adding to the randomization so that every time this loops over, it's playing a little bit differently. So this is a nice element to add a little bit of kind of that nice housey vibe. All right, so I'm just going to skip over this gated pad for a minute because it's the most complicated. We'll just talk about this Juno chord first. So again, this is just a preset, classic Juno wave from Wavetable. And it's basically like, so Wavetable uses audio samples essentially. And this is like a stack of square waves from the Juno, from a Juno. I'm not sure what model, but it sounds pretty cool. And then in Oscillator 2, I just added some noise to fill it out a bit. I'm playing a chord here, looks a bit crazy, but it's essentially just a E minor triad with the ninth, so that would be up here. Then if I do that, invert those seventh and ninth, right? And then duplicate, duplicate, and then duplicate again, and that's how I got it. But using the scale, Just makes it easy. If you know what a minor triad is, you know what a seventh is, you know what a ninth is, then it's hard to go wrong. You just add some more notes and see what sounds good. But the reason I'm adding so many notes here is because I wanted a really thick sound. What I'll do is on this one, I will mute out some of these notes, right, so we can compare. But a bit thin, a bit kind of top heavy. Got a bit more depth to it. So adding to the sound, we've got some processing. If I turn that all off, whoa, loud. So we're taking away the low end. We don't want that to be interfering with the bass and the kick. Got some overdrive that's adding quite a lot of volume, but also quite a lot of grittiness. Here's the chorus, the Tal Chorus LX that I mentioned. So that's just kind of adding some more brightness. It's quite a bright sound, but this just kind of really gives a bit of depth and grit to those higher frequencies. Then I'm just controlling it with the glue compressor a little bit, adding that nice chorus, some width. I've got both chorus circuits turned on, so it's adding extra chorus. And then I'm just controlling the volume with this volume knob. This chorus does add quite a bit of volume, so it's always important to turn it down a bit with the volume knob. Then I'm using the echo, and I've got this set to 1/8 notes, and it's just a stereo delay, but I've offset the left and right channels a little bit to give it a bit of width, spread it out, quite a bit of feedback, quite a bit of dry wet, helping it to ring out there. Really vibey element. So you'll notice in this E-piano that the MIDI pattern plays over the first bar and is skipped on the second bar, plays over the first bar, skipped on the second bar. And that allows us to have kind of call and response with the different elements. So I'm using this as a response, and then I've got vocals that are happening as a response as well. It just really helps to kind of create some flow and some dynamics in the, it's not really the arrangement, it's more like in the loop. Now let's have a look at this gated pad, gated synth. This looks pretty complicated. We've got a lot of processing going on here over quite a few channels. So if I turn this off, right, so that's the end result. Now the way we get there is I've got this gated pad, which is just a sample. Sounds like this. Nice kind of choir type thing. I'm using the auto filter more as a sound design device. I've got a lot of resonance and drive, which is really kind of accentuating the frequencies where the filter is at. There's some LFO on that to just move it randomly. I've got overdrive to bring up some of the harmonics. Chorus, again, to spread it out. And a gate. So the MIDI for this pad is just sustained over 2 bars, and that's not what it's playing. Right? If it didn't have the gate, it would be playing the same as the sample. The gate is coming from this, so this is just a white noise. So this could be anything. It could be a hi-hat. Putting the white noise there allows me to control the length of this note, so I could have it be very long or very short. You could also use a synth with a white noise oscillator, or any sound basically. And all this is doing is triggering the gate as to whether it's going to let audio through or not. So whenever this plays in this MIDI pattern, it tells this gate to let the sound through. Cool. Now I've got this rave generator. Sounds like this. So for this one, I've actually kind of played the same notes as the gate, and then I'm also using the gate to gate it. So without that. So putting the gate there just helps to make it sound a bit more snappy. Take that off and just play it. So that's the sound. So Rave Generator is another free plugin. It's sample based and samples loads of like old classic house, techno, rave sounds. There's all sorts of interesting stuff in there. It's a free download. Now you'll notice there that I'm playing B, and that's basically just because these are not pitched to C. So what you play on the keyboard does not translate to the sound that comes out of it, and every time you change presets, it actually changes pitch. which is a bit annoying, but you can't complain when it's free. So just be aware of that if you're going to use Rave Generator. Now, what I'm doing is processing both of these together, and yeah, we've got a lot of stuff going on. We've got the echo, reverb, overdrive, chorus, you know, all this good stuff that's like thickening up the sound, spreading it out. And then I've got a auto filter with more drive, more resonance, adding to the sound design. And then I've gone through and recorded automation. And then this is being gated again. So I still want to have that really kind of choppy gated sound, but I was just trying to get more harmonics, more grit, more randomness, so that every time that one of these notes plays, it kind of sounds a little bit different, sounds a bit more full. So if I turn off all that processing, it sounds like this. Sounds better. But much more interesting, much more vibe and character, in my opinion. And I'm just adding a little bit of reverb and insignificant amount of delay, so I'll just turn that off. You know, like a lot of music in a lot of different genres is referencing old school techniques and old school music from 90s, 2000s. And this is something that was used a lot in like old school rave trance music. So vocals, we've got a few different things going on here. These are all literally just samples that I've got from different places, Loop Cloud, whatnot, and just got things to sound cool. I was like listening to his tracks, Max Dean's tracks, and it seemed to be a bit of a hodgepodge of different stuff. A lot of them were kind of pretty classic or well-known samples, but I was going for the free route. I think it's worth putting in a bit more time than what I've done here, or digging a bit deeper to find your vocal samples, as it can really add a lot to the track. And like that's almost half the battle, is finding a cool sample and trying to kind of push the boundaries, look for things that haven't been used. There's so many people making music, there's so many samples being recycled. I think it's worth trying to dig deeper, be creative, and find a way that you can stand out. What I've got here is a little glitchy thing.
Yeah, adjust.
Cool, nothing to it. Yeah, adjust.
Yeah, adjust. Yeah, adjust.
You see that sits here in between the electric piano, like I mentioned. Then we've got another part of the same vocal, which just did another little glitch. What I'm doing is using the clip gain envelope to just only kind of play the bits of the sample that I want at different times. So that's essentially another way of doing gating, like I was showing you up here with the gate trigger and the gate plugin. Now I've got another little Vox hit here, which is literally just a kind of sustained vocal sample. I've put it into a simpler, but I just didn't want all this to play, and this was just an easy way to control it with MIDI. And then I've got this Set Me Free, which is a bit more of a hook, bit of a kind of old housey sounding type vocal.
Feel my body and set me free. Feel my body and set me free.
Got a bit more character than some of the other bits. And then I've got this spoken word sample, which I literally found like a few different phrases from the same sample pack and just got some that I thought worked well together.
I feel so good inside. Open your eyes. I like the way you work me.
And you can hear I'm using some automation here to send that to a ping-pong delay. Yeah.
I like the way you work me.
I'm just using the automation to decide which parts of the vocal to send to the delay, which in this case was the work me part. That just helps to fill in some of the space in the break, as you can hear.
I like the way you work me.
Feel my body and set me free.
So again, I'm sending some of this vocal, just the free. So it's a really cool technique to just decide which parts of the vocal that you want to have delayed. On the spoken word, I've just got a bunch of processing, mainly to make it sound more audible, and then obviously this echoes, adding a bit of vibe and character. So if I turn all that off,
I feel so good inside.
sounds a little bit disconnected from the track
I feel so good inside.
without the echo.
I feel so good inside.
It kind of fits a bit more, it's a bit more present by taking out some of this low end and pumping up some of the highs, using the glue compressor to even out the dynamics, a little bit more EQ, using a little bit of LFO tool to pump it to the beat. Just makes it sound a little bit more rhythmic because it's actually at quite a different timing to the track. Then of course we've got this echo which just adds some nice vibe.
I feel so good inside. Both in your eyes. I like the way you work me.
Feel my body and set me free.
So we've got a few little effect sounds, not too much. A snare roll here. So cool snare roll, just a snare sample coming from East End Dubs. Some overdrive to just kind of thicken it up, make it more gritty and more powerful. Bringing up some of those mid-range harmonics, cutting out the lows. I'm using the pan randomization so that each time that plays in the sequence, it's just being panned by 8% left or right randomly. That's the MIDI pattern. Just silenced a couple of the notes to give it a bit more groove and character. I've got a noise splash coming from Underground Shades of House, my sample pack. Link up here if you want to go and grab that. You can see here I'm using this fade envelope just to kind of shape the sound to something that I like. See it a little bit different here. A little bit longer here on the drop. And then we've just got one reverse sweep. So that is how we do it. In terms of the arrangement, this is obviously not a full track, but I just kind of tried to gradually introduce the elements, create some sections that emphasize different parts of the beat and different elements. We're kind of teasing this gated pad throughout, and then at the drop we switch it up, we take away the electric piano and just focus on the gated pad. So it sounds like this.
I like the way you work me.
Feel my body and set me free.
So then that switches up quite dramatically there. We take away the gated pad again, and I'm using some automation on the bass just to open up the cutoff. So that kind of gives the bass its moment to shine, and also just shifts up the vibe. As always, the project files are available to download from Patreon if you want to go and check those out. There's project files for this video and pretty much every other video that I do on the channel. So there's loads of content there for you to get stuck into. Now let's just play through from the top.
Yeah, I just.
Feel my body and set me free.
Yeah, I just.
Feel my body and set me free.
Yeah, I just.
I feel so good inside. Both in your eyes. I like the way you work me.
Feel my body and set me free.
Alright guys, there you go. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you found something useful in the video. Who's your favorite deep minimal house artist at the moment? Let me know in the comments. If you like these videos in the style of how to make music like a particular artist, then check out this playlist. There's loads of stuff there. I think you're going to find something you like. Well, that's it from me today. We'll catch you next time. Peace.
They say